Disruption is not a neutral term. On any given day, you are either being disrupted or you are disrupting someone. So what I want to do today is I want to connect some dots for you that I hope will inspire you, challenge the way that you think about your business, about your role, and about ultimately how you take this business forward in times of deep uncertainty, right? And we all are living in times of deep uncertainty. So, what is creating disruption? Of course, it is change. And it is innovation, primarily, that is driving this change, okay? And if you don't feel good about change, this is a difficult time to be alive, okay? It really is. So here in Sweden, Thomas von Cook, managing director of one of the most successful private equity firms in this region, even in established industries. We're not talking about Silicon Valley technology companies. Even in established industries, you're going to see a lot of tipping points where old behavior, that's the key word, behavior changes abruptly, quickly, rapidly. And if you're on the wrong side of that change, things will get really ugly really fast. Ask the folks at BlackBerry or Nokia how fast things can get ugly, okay? Really fast. The word behavior is going to be a very important word because we're going to talk a lot about the customer experience, and we're going to talk a lot about how we create innovation to deliver better experiences to our customers. One of the very interesting things that we're seeing is that disruption is increasingly coming from outside of your respective industry. So why would I have a drone on the same slide that I have the Michelin Tire Man? Because with Moore's law, every 18 months, computing power doubles while the price falls in half. And soon, drones will have enough cargo capacity and a long enough distance capacity that the number of lorries that are being asked to take packages to distances far and wide will be reduced. And the problem for Michelin is that drones don't need tires, okay? So how do you reinvent your future? Now, in 1984, sitting in Silicon Valley, if someone was to say, can you imagine a day when Apple will dominate the music industry as the single biggest seller of music? Can you imagine a day when Apple will be in the automotive business? I don't think anybody, unless they had been on an LSD trip that very day, could have envisioned something so remarkable, okay? And Starbucks, right? Now, we all know that, a long time ago, McDonald's decided to get into the breakfast business because McDonald's understood that they had spare capacity and they had brand equity. And they totally changed the landscape. Well, now today, our friends at Starbucks, and I'll get into this detail in a little while, are getting into the evening business of serving craft beer and wine. And I assure you, it will change the landscape, okay? So this is a brilliantly managed company. So what happens then is that when these disruptions come from outside of our industry, we get blindsided. And I don't know about you, but being blindsided is often a very uncomfortable place to be, okay? Just ask this guy. Businesses are being blindsided because of these technical disruptions that are happening from outside of their industry because they're so siloed that all they do is look within the narrow confines of their own sector, and they don't see what is happening just across the divide. But they're also being blindsided because of this rare new creature that walks the earth called the millennial, okay? And trust me, I spend a lot of time with these young men and women because as a professor in an MBA program, I stare into their eyes for many hours at a time, many days a week. And I will assure you that what we know about millennials is that the ability to get to them is very difficult. They do not read newspapers or physical magazines. They do not watch commercial television. Okay? They do not take taxis. They take Uber cars so that you can't even put an ad in the back of a taxi cab. Okay? They are a unique breed. And our ability to understand and connect with them is very challenging. And that is another reason why so many companies are struggling to remain vibrant. What we are seeing is a dramatic number of companies that were once considered impregnable, unassailable, that are losing their ability to grow. And it is happening at an increasingly fast rate. In the 10-year period between 73 and 83, 35% of the Fortune 1000 fell off the list. In the 10-year period between 2003 and 2013, 70% fell off the list, okay? This is why Hewlett-Packard is splitting itself in two. This is why we're seeing so many different companies struggling to regain their footing. In the first half of the 20th century, what we saw was the companies that had manufacturing prowess, Ford, General Electric, Boeing, Sony. This is where dominance was derived from. This is where competitive advantage was most important. As we moved into the 60s to the 90s, it became about distribution and about supply chain. This is where Dell was born, okay? And then in the era of the PC revolution, fomented by people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, it was the information age. But we're now in a completely different time. It used to be we were about controlling everything with the customer. And today, as uncomfortable as it is, we actually have to give up control. We have to empower our customers to have the control that they need to make decisions that are right for them. And ideally, we are a part of the solution set that they ultimately gravitate back to. So this is a profoundly different way of doing business. And what I would say very simply is that when you live in the age of the empowered customer, the primary innovation is customer-centric. This is where design thinking or human-centric design becomes the single most important source of competitive advantage. See this guy right here, Sean Fanning? Now, he looks very clean-cut. He's clean-shaven. He's a 19-year-old student at Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. He is an anarchist, as much an anarchist as any man that has ever lived. And why do I say that? Because he single-handedly brought down the music industry to its knees. Napster was MP3 peer-to-peer file sharing that allowed young students the opportunity to have all of the songs that they could ever imagine without paying for them. Now, in practice, it wasn't all that cool, because what happened was the companies that were dominating the scene at the time, Sony and Panasonic and Diamond Rio, approached this from the perspective of let's make a great device, let's make a great product. The problem is there was no easy way to interact with them, no easy way to organize these tunes, no easy way to fast forward through them or to create playlists or search on specific artists. All you could do was fast forward. Just like the consumption of beer should be a uniquely enjoyable experience, the consumption of music should be a uniquely enjoyable, joyous experience, and it was anything but. And then this guy comes along. And what he did is he took that studio culture, that human-centric culture from the art and architecture world and said, let us understand what is the entire customer journey or experience in the consumption of music. Let us make sure that it is in fact a joyous one, not a frustrating one. He was the guy that began to understand, okay, how do we allow our customers to discover music? How do we give them the opportunity to easily download music? How do we give them the opportunity to easily access that music once they've downloaded it, organize it, search for exactly the artist they want, create a playlist they want to listen to depending on what mood they're in, okay? And how do we give them control over this experience? And thus was born the iPod, but just as importantly, the iTunes system. And I can tell you, a company known as, it was called RIM, but they now are known as BlackBerry. They changed the name of the company to the name of the product, okay? These guys are engineers. They did not understand. It's not about the device. Is the BlackBerry a great device? Yeah, it's got great battery life. It's very secure. But the experience that the customer had trying to surf the web was awful. It was terrible. And so these guys got blindsided again because it was a computer company coming into the smartphone space. Apple in the retail environment. Okay, and this is also very relevant for you because of the changing nature of the landscape in which you are on trade. Okay, and the thing that's amazing is when Jobs decided he was going to create retail space, what he basically decided was so against the conventional wisdom. Everyone said, why would you sell computers in a store? Dell sells them online, okay? It's all about the supply chain. You know, you can get these through a catalog. You can call 100 different catalog companies and they will have one shipped to your door in 24 hours. Why would you want to do that? Well, we all know Steve Jobs, right? Now, have you ever seen a store that sells electronics that look anything like this before? Usually the shelves are overflowing with stuff, okay? Jobs also understands that it's the entire experience, including the unboxing. Everything about when you touch Apple is about simplicity, okay, and about elegance. These are some of the digital innovations that are happening in and around the beverage industry and specifically in the beer industry that I think are very relevant things to think about. Pepsi-Cola doing a lot of work. They run a lot of startup competitions trying to drive innovation around their platform. Mondelez actually has something called the Mobile Future, where they ask their executives to spend 90 days in residence in mobile startups. So they have a much deeper understanding of the way that these startups operate and drives behavior change. Okay? And then they've got this app where, you know, God forbid you have to type something into your screen. So you have a pizza emoji. Okay? And if you put your pizza emoji into your chat app or into Twitter, you can actually have one of these pizzas brought to your house, okay? And I think it's an important thing to understand that another thing that the millennials will tell you is that they are increasingly likely to use imagery and video and not type. So people are creating a lot of technology to accommodate these unique preferences of this community. We all know about the importance of the craft movement. This is a friend of mine. The gentleman on the left, my left now, Owen Wilson, gentleman with the glasses, MIT graduate, computer scientist. He teamed up with this burly guy named Sean Larkin. Sean has won 14 awards at the Great International Beer Festival. They teamed up to create Revival Brewery. And Owen is using a lot of the same techniques that we have used to build technology startups in the way that he has designed the Revival Brewery, okay? And they're using a lot of really interesting imagery with a lot of heritage, and they're using a lot of great social media, and, you know, they're being very, very successful. And so, you know, they're doing their thing just the way Meantime is doing their thing. They understand how to create community with millennials, right? And, you know, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, go shuck yourself. Revival Brewing Company presents Shucker's Revenge Oyster Ale, the official beer of the Ocean State Oyster Fest, okay? So they have some fun. The quickest way to communicate is not through words, okay? The great English poet laureate Alfred Lord Tennyson said, you know, in a very simple way, that just because I said something doesn't mean that you heard me, okay? And so rather than communicate in words, sometimes we communicate in pictures. We communicate in prototypes. And then obviously put into the hands of your users and test it and iterate, okay? Design is directed toward human beings. To design is to solve human problems by identifying them and executing the best solution. Customer expectations are changing because the journey that they're taking is more complex. It's an omni-channel journey. It's a physical and digital journey, as we've seen Starbucks and Nike and everyone else that I've highlighted. And so you have the front of the house, those places where your customer interacts with someone who is a representative, either of your company or someone who is an agent representing your company. But of course, there's a lot of back-end processes where we do not see what's happening, but boy, do they have an impact on the experience. And often this is where it breaks down. So often processes break down. And many times these processes are what kills the experience. If you order from an e-commerce site and you have a terrible logistical experience, you won't go back, even if the website is awesome. When you do this in the real world, you do not ask simple yes or no questions. You want open-ended questions. You want to get to the 5 levels of why. When you finally get down to that 5th level of why, you start to really get to the guts of what people care about, right? And when people start telling you stories, you know you have won their trust, right? In an interview, you don't get the real stuff. But when they start sharing stories, now you know they're sharing with you something that means something to them. IDEO, Joe Colucci, runs the Boston office. People do not do what they say they do. They don't do what we think they'll do, and they don't even do what they think they do. So the problem is you can do all the market research in the world, but if you don't get to the essence of it, it doesn't happen. Thank you very much.